What is going on, everybody? You are watching Good News on GoodVue. Today is July 19th, and I'm here with, July 19th, 2025. And I'm here with the man, Lee Kanter. Man, it's always good to be with you. How you doing, man?
Duke, congratulations on the great event last night with Carrie Murphy at Refresh Church.
Yeah.
She is funny, man. She's a Christian comedian, and wow, it was so entertaining. And you did such a professional job. And just, to tease our viewers, it's going to be a pay-per-view on GoodVue coming up. And
Yeah.
really worth seeing. She was funny. Hope
It
to
was
have
really
more
a
of
good
her.
time. Everybody did so well. Joshua Williams did well. Michelle Hernandez, who plays Galleta, she did phenomenal. So it was just a great time. Positive, man. People felt positive and charged.
Yeah.
It was really a great night, man. And the GoodVue team has always been amazing. So this is just exciting. We got more to come for you guys. And so as you know, this is good news, and we discuss world views or world issues from a biblical perspective.
Right.
And Lee, you recently were just in Israel, which
Right.
oh man, yeah, that which is phenomenal. However, God's put something on your heart that you want to share with everybody, and I
Right.
really want to jump into because generational curses is something that on the western side of the Western church means one thing, but there's a divine concept of generational curses, a geographical concept. So let's get into it, man. What do you got for us?
So, yeah, Duke, when we were in Israel, one of the things that we did was to go up to the border of Syria and Israel, which, is in the Golan Heights. And we went to the Druze village of Majdal Shams, which in this war, when Hezbollah, so when Hamas attacked Israel 600 and about 60 days ago, something like that, um, October 7th of 2023 now. Um, and eventually Hezbollah, and they were lobbing bombs into northern Israel. Well, that one of the places that they lobbed a bomb was in the Druze village of Majdal Shams, and we were at the playground. I'd love to be able to share a couple of pictures where 9 Druze children were killed while they were playing in the playground, and they have the pictures of them there, and they have their burned up bicycles and everything, and the fence that was broken down. And we were there. The kids were playing soccer again, but the bomb shelter was literally about 25 feet from the playground. They just didn't have time to get there, and it was a tragedy. But the Druze people, which about half of the Druze is a separate religion, so it was an offshoot of Shiite Islam, and about half of the Druze live in Syria, and the other half are split between Lebanon and Israel, in the Golan Heights a lot, mostly in Israel. But what the news of the week is, as a consequence of this war that Hamas started, that spilled over then with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and then eventually, to Iran, but also into Syria. So in this war, when basically Hezbollah became weak and Iran became weak, the Assad regime was thrown out of uh, Syria, which they basically tortured and killed like over 500,000 of their own people. But who came into Syria was a group of Sunni Muslims, and they came from northern Syria, and they sort of now are ruling in Damascus. And so there are these generational curses, these generational hatreds. So what happened this week is the Druze population in southern Israel was attacked by some Bedouin Shiite Muslims, and there were over 940 people were killed. The Israeli Druze, so the Druze in Israel stormed the border fence where we were at in the border of Israel, and they tried to get in and help their brothers and sisters in Syria, in southern Syria, and the Syrian government Sunni forces came in with the Bedouins, and there was this massacre and executions, women, children, just terrible things. And eventually Israel bombed Damascus and the military headquarters, and was and some Syrian military, government military tanks and stuff. So, here we are back in the Middle East. So, but this is generational curses, right? Because whether it's Muslim Sunnis versus Shiites, which is, or Muslims versus Jews, Sunnis versus Sunnis, or Saudi Arabians or Arab versus Iranians, which are Persians. I don't know, but these generational curses, they go back so long, and they're taught to the children, and they're propagated through the children, and it becomes, it just becomes part of who they are, and they don't even know why. It becomes irrational, and like the irrational hatred of the Jewish people and anti-Semitism that's so prominent in the world. And I just want to say that this is not God's heart, right? Because Yeshua came to deliver us from evil.
Yeah.
And to free us from generational curses. And how did he come to do that? He came because he was the fulfillment of God's covenantal promises to Abraham, that through Abraham, all nations would be blessed. Eventually, through the blood of Yeshua, we would all, by grace, through faith, be saved. And this is what he's opened up for us. But I really want to get to the underlying principle here, which is a principle of the problem of scarcity versus abundance. It's a problem of our mentality. And that really comes back to, life versus death, and good versus evil, abundance versus scarcity. In fact, in Deuteronomy 28:45 through 48, where God is going through the blessings of obedience and the curses of disobedience, listen to what he says he says about the curses of disobedience. All these curses shall come upon you and pursue you and overtake you till you are destroyed, because you did not obey the voice of the Lord your God to keep his commandments and his statutes that he command you. They shall be a sign and a wonder against you and your offspring forever, because you did not serve the Lord your God with joyfulness and gladness of heart, because of the abundance of all things. Therefore, you shall serve your enemies, whom the Lord will send against you, in hunger and thirst and nakedness and lacking everything. And he will put a yoke of iron on your neck until he has destroyed you, which is quite different than the yoke that Jesus says, right? He says, my yoke, which he says, my yoke is light, right? My burden is light. But so what does this really get down to? It gets down to the posture of our heart and our mindset, because a mindset of joyfulness and gladness of heart is a heart of gratitude for the abundance of all things. And I don't care whether you're male, female, black, white, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, whatever, all human beings have a mind problem. And that mind problem results in disobedience. And the mind problem is scarcity. If only I had X,
Oh yeah, yeah,
then I'd be happy.
yeah.
Right? If then all my problems would go away. But that mind problem of X, what does it lead to? It leads to covetousness. Thou shalt not covet. It leads to lying, bearing false witness. It leads to stealing. It leads to hatred, to anger, to murder, and to adultery. It leads to all the sins: envy, greed, anger, lust, gluttony, and sloth. But underneath and behind every one of those sins and this mindset of scarcity is pride. And why is it pride? Because pride stands in total contrast to humility and a posture of our heart of gratitude. And this goes all the way back to Eden and to paradise. Where in Eden, paradise, we have everything. We're walking with God. And how does the enemy tempt us? With the one thing that God said, don't eat of that tree.
Yeah.
The one scarcity. And
One.
so I think this is a model of how we end up having a scarcity mind focus. So in this paradise of abundance and fullness of life and total blessing, there was one tree. God said, don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And the serpent tempted Eve, not only with knowledge, but with the proposition that surely God didn't say you shouldn't eat of that, because if you eat of that tree, then you'll be like God. You'll have everything.
Right. But they already
And
had
so
it.
it's this idea that we somehow, in our own will, in our own efforts, in our own pride, if we get what we think we need, that if only we have, if we fulfill our desire, then we will have that fullness, right? But this is not what Jesus said. Jesus said, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow him. But this is making a God of ourselves and our wants and our desires and what we think we need, our scarcity. And what does that do? That opens the door for the enemy to come in. It gives an opening. And then the enemy gets a stronghold on our minds and desires through our scarcity, the desire of our heart. And then this leads to all sorts of addictions and loss of self-control and the no fruits of the spirit, no self-control, no faithfulness, no meekness, no humility, no patience, no kindness, no goodness, no patience, no joy, no peace. Because our scarcity is controlling us. So this really gets to the problem or the principle, the biblical principle of multiplication. Because this is a principle which the Bible and Jesus teaches us over and over and over. Jesus multiplies the bread. He multiplies the fish, the wine. He multiplies salvation through his blood.
Come on.
And God's love is multiplied through the Spirit. And this is how God wants us to come together. And this is how God leads, how Yeshua delivers us from evil. It's through him, by denying ourselves, taking up our cross and following him, and having a posture of our heart of humility and gratitude and thanks, and that salvation through his love and his mercy, that then we can have the multiplication of the peace, the shalom, the fruits of the Spirit that God is looking for us to reap in this. The blessings of obedience, right?
Yeah.
Not the curses of disobedience that come when we don't worship him with joyfulness and gladness of heart because of the abundance of all things. And what does the enemy do? The enemy multiplies scarcity and desires and division and control, and gets us to follow a multitude to do evil.
So when I hear you, I love how you took it from what's happening in modern day, from a physical war all the way into the spiritual war, into the mental war, because you kind of walked us backwards into how it actually stems, not just from the garden, but really how it affects us on a mental level in our perception of the war that we fight within. And scarcity, it's like this explosion that leads into all these other things, and it affects us in all these other realms of our reality. And so when you start saying scarcity, it's almost impossible not to think about fear. Like seriously, like to think, okay, well, I'm not going to trust these people because, you know what I mean? Like fear is diabolical. It can create vain imaginations, wildness. It deters us from the fruits of the Spirit. And one of the things that hit me the most about what you said was this scarcity leads to no fruits of the Spirit. And the reason why it's so important when we think about breaking generational curses, the real person, the only one that can really do that is Yeshua, because we're the only ones that he's actually called to fulfill the Great Commission, to go into these areas of scarcity. These governments are taking over these people, creating scarcity on them. So it's only the people of God that have the mandate to go in, and it's the resurrected Christ, the Spirit of the Lord in us, that goes into these communities. And so when we don't take this stuff seriously, we're actually just as bad as their governments. Seriously, when we don't respond, and I'm so happy that God put this on your heart, because if we don't respond to that scarcity and knowing that it's going to turn into corruption, war, hatred, all these other things, it's only a matter of time before it comes here. Now, the reason why I'm saying this, Lee, is because going back to 2023, when everything did happen in October, and I started seeing people going free Palestine and all that other stuff. I know that we don't want war. However, they did not understand. I saw the media taking advantage, manipulating things, and it's here. The mindset has come to America.
Yeah.
and we've got to respond to it, brother. And I'm so glad that you brought this up. But I think for a long time there was this kind of like that stuff happens over their mentality,
Yeah.
and now we know that anti-Semitism is growing. Uh, and I
Well,
don't.
Duke, it's not, yeah, it's in a way it's easier to see when you have literally people living on two sides of a fence that, hate each other for generations. It's you can say, oh, that's over there because we don't have any fences, 3,000 miles across the United States,
Right.
right? But the problem is this, right? These generational curses of scarcity that lead to disobedience, they come into our personality, into our emotions and our mind before we can think when we're babies. They come into us as through our families and through, the Lord says, and that He forgives us our transgression, our iniquity and sin, but He holds us to account unto the children and the children's children unto the third and fourth generation. So these sort of generational curses, and it can be alcoholism, it can be, sexual immorality, it can be, you know, uh replacement theology, it can be all sorts of, it can be racism, it can
Yeah.
be all sorts of generational curses, and we can think that we're free of them,
Mhm.
but they can, and especially these personal things, these personal sins that are openings for the enemy where he can get a stronghold and lead us into patterns of addiction, looking to fulfill what we think is a scarcity need, that if only we fulfill this emotional need or this need for money or this need for pride or status or, some sense of self-worth that has been passed down to us, that we're still
Uh,
being controlled.
yeah.
It doesn't matter that if it's Muslim, Shiite, Sunni, these are things, and this is why, like you said, it's only Yeshua that can deliver us from
Yeah.
evil.
Yeah. It's the only thing I've seen because, you know, this is going to sound silly when I say it, but I used to think that I could minister to Paul. I'm like, God, I wish you had sent me to Paul. I would have led him to you. And the Father made it clear, no, you would have been at the end of his spear. And the reason why is because there are certain people that only God can reach. And I think we forget that God's an evangelist himself, that he knows how to reach people. However, what does he do when he reaches people? He reaches people and he sends people. He reaches them and he sends them. So we know that he reaches, we know that he saves, and we know that he sends. And for a long time, when I saw what was happening to American families, when I saw what was happening, I was seeing it as we're better off. And the people overseas, if they would just learn how to, serve God, if they would just put God first the way we do over here. And then God started showing me, it's like, no, how can they hear without a preacher? How can they hear without people sharing the gospel? And then I'm so realizing we have 3,000 churches in the Hampton Roads area by itself. How many of them are actually fulfilling the Great Commission? And I'm not dogging the church out, but I'm saying, what have we done in the Western culture? And I think that's that lasso controlling us, of replacement theology, that as long as we were good over here, not sharing the gospel around the world, not sharing. And this is why I'm so grateful that GoodVue has 35% of our viewership overseas. But even more, we understand now that this reconciliation thing is this is a key element in fulfilling the Great Commission, getting Yeshua to these places of scarcity. Because when I think about the profound changes that have been made since the resurrection, to like right before America's birth, right? Massive dynamics were changing. I mean, amongst family culture, not just because of the dark ages and that, but the message that the apostles brought out to different cultures were making an impact in sustaining family dynamics forever. And so we've got to get back to that place. We've got to get back to that place where we are serious about fulfilling the Great Commission.
Yeah, well,
and I'll say,
I think the one thing I'd probably disagree with you about is the United States, because with God, all things are possible, but I don't think the United States at this moment in time is putting God first.
not anymore.
I think capitalism, in fact, or this free market economy, whatever you want to call it, it breeds, it is a opening for and a stronghold for scarcity mentality. And and it's like every man out for himself, and it's like this materialistic point of view. If I had a bigger car, bigger house, the right TV, just go down the line, of stuff, and it's not denying ourselves, taking up our cross and following him. It's making an idol of ourselves. It's more narcissistic.
When I was
we're I think that we because of our 3,000 mile borderless country, we thought we weren't open to the maybe internal divisions and separation. But the enemy can use any seed of scarcity to control us. And we have to plug those holes, because the enemy will come rushing in and use a seed of scarcity as a stronghold against us, and control us with it. And
I gotta say too, it also the level of entitlement and ungratefulness. I'm glad you brought up narcissism, because that is a big part of it. That scarcity also causes. And when I had that mindset that America was so blessed by God, and I was basing it off the stuff. I remember this. I remember being that kid going like, "Wow, we are the greatest nation in the world," but it was based off the stuff. And so even in that narcissistic kind of replacement theology kind of mindset, it's almost like, well, we're the most blessed nation in the world because God has given us this stuff. And it was only when I got older was I really realizing that, no, that's idolatry. That's idolatry. This is what God is against. And so if we're going to break those generational curses worldwide, we got to get Yeshua back to the world. We got to get Yeshua and take the words seriously of fulfilling the Great Commission. But we are out of time. And so,
just getting back to what you said about the stuff controlling us, we have to, in the United States, and maybe part of that is people need to go out of the country and see how blessed we are. We are so blessed. We do have an abundance, and we have to have an attitude of gratitude in this country for what the Lord has given us. And we have to be a light in the world, but we're told as believers to be in the world, but not of the world, and we have to know that all good gifts come from God, and from Yeshua. And that's where our blessing is. And that is the blessing we want to share through the good news on
Yeah.
GoodVue.
All right. You guys be good out there. God bless you.